In 1985, a man named Russell Nash is attending a wrestling match at Madison Square Garden in New York City. He is alone, sitting high up in the stands, close to the exit. Looking somewhat forlorn, he suddenly feels a strange tremor and is compelled to leave. As he heads to his car, Nash is confronted by a man named Iman Fazil. Fazil identifies Nash by his real name, Connor McLeod, then attacks him with an antique sword, challenging him to a duel. Connor reluctantly accepts and draws a katana. After a fierce sword fight, Connor decapitates Fazil and is enveloped by a mysterious blue energy which destroys all the cars around him. In a panic, he hides his sword in one of the light racks hanging from the ceiling and speeds out of the garage. But before he can get away, he is blocked by the police, who search him and take him in for questioning. The story goes back to Scotland in 1536, where a young Connor is seen with his fiancée Kate and war-weary cousins Angus and Dougal. Their clan is preparing for war against their longtime rivals, Clan Fraser. As they ride out of the village, Kate tells Angus and Dougal to make sure Connor comes back alive. Back in present-day 1985, detectives Moran and Garfield are attempting to interrogate Connor, but Connor's strange accent and refusal to be intimidated makes Garfield lose his cool and he assaults Connor, and a fight breaks out in the interrogation room. This incident, coupled with lack of evidence, results in Connor's release. Forensics expert Brenda Wyatt is intrigued by Fazil's sword, as it is a very valuable historical artifact, worth millions of dollars. Later, Connor returns to the garage to retrieve his katana, but as he does, he sees that Brenda is also there looking at the crime scene. She finds some metal shards from the katana embedded in a nearby concrete column and takes them for analysis. The scene returns to the Highlands, where the armies of Clan Fraser and Clan MacLeod are preparing to face each other in battle. Clan Fraser's leader, Chief Murdoch, has taken on the services of the Kurgan, an imposing dark mercenary in black leather armor. The Kurgan tells Murdoch that he wants to kill Connor on the battlefield and that nobody else should fight him. The battle begins and Connor, who has never been in battle before, is very scared. He soon finds nobody wants to fight him, but eventually the Kurgan finds him and easily defeats Connor by stabbing him in the chest, shouting, "There can be only one." Dougal and Angus see the Kurgan preparing to decapitate Connor and attack him, forcing him away from Connor, who lays on the ground gravely injured. Connor is taken back to the village but is so badly wounded everybody assumes he is going to die. The priest performs the last rites over Connor's deathbed, and Angus has to drag Kate away so the last thing Connor hears isn't the sound of a wailing woman. We learn that Connor, in his Russell Nash persona, is an antiques dealer and seems to be quite wealthy. A very pretty older woman named Rachel Ellenstein is his assistant. Later, the Kurgan, now wearing Judas Priest stage wear and sporting a hideous scar on his neck, drives into the city after hearing of Fazil's death. Using the alias Victor Kruger, he takes up residence at a seedy motel and assembles his sectional bastard sword. He practices his technique until he is interrupted by a hooker named Candy. Connor follows Brenda to a bar where they strike up a conversation and Brenda becomes very interested in him. They both leave, and as Brenda tries to follow Connor, Connor grabs her and tells her to be quiet. Seconds later, he is attacked by Kruger. They fight, but Connor is at an obvious disadvantage without a sword, having to use a metal pipe instead. The fight is interrupted by a police helicopter and the Kurgan flees, shouting, "Another time, Highlander." The scene once again returns to the Highlands where Connor has made a remarkable recovery and is now back to normal in only a few days. While he is happy to be alive, his friends ostracize him. Kate says that his recovery is the work of the devil. Almost everybody in the clan mirrors that sentiment. When Angus tells Connor to leave and he refuses, he is hit in the head with a water jug. The townspeople form a mob, tie him to a pole, and take him out to be burnt alive. But Angus frees him, convincing the villagers to commute the death sentence in favour of exile. Connor tells Angus he will never forget him. Brenda has analysed the metal fragments and discovered them to be extremely unusual. She makes a date with Connor and they plan to meet at her apartment. Although she tries to make it seem like it's only a date, she actually is trying to entrap him. She has a cassette recorder hidden in a drawer and also has a gun just in case. However, when Connor arrives, he is immediately onto her. They share a very old bottle of brandy, bottled in 1783, that he has brought with him as a gift for Brenda. Before taking a drink, Connor puts the glass to his nose. While smelling the brandy, he closes his eyes and begins describing events of the year 1783 as though he was there. Connor then informs Brenda that he knows about the recording device and the two cops downstairs in the unmarked police car. Brenda insists that she only wants to know what's going on and that the shards of metal from Connor's sword date back several thousand years, but he tells her to stop digging and leaves. In 1541, Connor has settled in Glencoe, where he works as a blacksmith and is now married to a woman named Heather. One day, they are visited by a well-dressed older gentleman carrying the katana that Connor uses in the modern era. The man identifies himself as Juan Sanchez Villa-Lobos Ramirez. He explains that they differ from normal men. They do not age, are immune to disease, and will only die if their heads are separated from their bodies. He proves this by knocking an arrogant Connor who cannot swim off a rowboat. Connor does not drown, and actually marvels at the fact he can breathe underwater before bobbing back to the surface, seething with confusion and anger. He tries to attack Ramirez with his Highland sword but fails. Ramirez easily disarms Connor and tells him that they are ready to begin. While training Connor in the art of swordsmanship, Ramirez explains a long cycle he refers to as the game, where immortals are compelled by an incomprehensible force to hunt each other down. When one immortal decapitates another, the winner receives a transfer of power called the quickening. The game is destined to continue until only a few immortals remain, triggering the gathering, where the survivors feel an irresistible pull towards a faraway land and fight until only one remains. The last immortal standing will receive the cumulative sum of every quickening, which Ramirez cryptically refers to as the prize. Discussion soon turns toward the Kurgan, who is revealed to be the oldest and strongest of the immortals, descended from an ancient barbaric tribe from Kiev and Rus in the steppes of Russia. He must not achieve the prize or mortals will be enslaved forever. Connor also learns that all immortals are sterile and fears how Heather will react when she learns he cannot give her any children. Ramirez reveals that he has been married 3 times and his third wife, a Japanese princess named Shikiku, the daughter of the man who made Ramirez's katana, was the love of his life. Eventually, Shikiku died of old age, and he was devastated. He urges Connor to let Heather go and forswear future mortal relationships to avoid the same heartbreak. Connor refuses. One night while Connor is away, the Kurgan arrives, demanding to know where the Highlander is. Ramirez tells the Kurgan he is too late, saying that he has already prepared Connor. The Kurgan is furious at Ramirez and attacks. Ramirez gets an early advantage, slashing deep into the Kurgan's throat, revealing how Kurgan got the scar on his neck and how his voice was altered, and then wounding the Kurgan in the side. However, the Kurgan's rage and ferocity eventually tip the battle in his favor. He asks who Heather is, and Ramirez lies, saying she is his woman so that his enemy won't use her against Connor. He decapitates Ramirez and receives the quickening. After it has surged through his body, he falls from the tower where he and Ramirez had battled. Heather approaches him thinking he's dead, but he grabs her. After the death of his mentor, Connor attempts to return to a normal life, but as Ramirez warned, Heather succumbs to old age, while Connor remains youthful. On her deathbed, she thanks Connor for staying with her until the end, and asks that he honor her memory by lighting a candle on her birthday. He says he will. Then Heather dies in his arms. After burying Heather, Connor plants his Scottish broadsword in the ground to mark her grave. Appropriating Ramirez's katana as his weapon, he destroys all traces of his old life and leaves Scotland. Connor meets an exotic-looking man named Sundar Castagia in present-day Central Park at the Bow Bridge. It becomes apparent they are longtime friends as well as immortals. They talk about how few of them are left and say the time for the final battle is close. They also discuss the possibility that they might have to kill each other. Connor and Castagia recall meeting in Boston circa 1783. Connor is about to duel a very wealthy aristocrat and is so drunk he can hardly stand up, but he still attempts to fight. The other man easily defeats Connor by stabbing him and quickly declares himself the victor. However, Connor gets up and wants to continue the fight. The man is stunned but resumes the fight, easily stabbing Connor again. A humorous situation ensues where the man repeatedly kills Connor, and each time Connor gets back on his feet until he apologizes for insulting the man's wife by calling her a drunken warthog. After much investigation, Brenda finds out that Connor should be dead. Russell Nash is the name of a baby who died at birth. She confronts Rachel, and in a flashback we learn that Connor rescued her from the Nazis when she was a child. Rachel tries to keep Brenda away, but Connor takes Brenda upstairs and shows her his priceless antiques that he has been collecting over the centuries as an immortal. Connor explains to Brenda who he really is. He proves it to her by stabbing himself in the stomach. After this revelation, Brenda and Connor become lovers. Although Connor is reluctant, and the ghostly voice of Ramirez suggests that he let her go. Elsewhere in the city, Kirk, a gung-ho ex-marine with survivalist tendencies, sees Kruger and Castagia dueling in an alley. Kruger kills Castagia. Kirk, clearly freaked out by witnessing this event, shoots Kruger with a machine gun, sending him flying backwards onto some garbage. When Kirk goes to see if he's dead, Kruger emerges unscathed and impales him before tossing him onto the ground. A crowd watches as he receives his quickening. Kirk survives and gives the police Kruger's description. In response, Kruger alters his appearance by shaving his head and covering the scar on his neck with a safety pin necklace. Connor is at a church, lighting a candle for Heather's birthday. Kruger enters, revealing that Castagia is dead and he and Connor are now the only immortals left. Kruger taunts Connor by telling him of his defeat of Ramirez and about Ramirez's wife. He then realizes that Heather was actually Connor's wife and had never told him about what happened. Connor is furious, but is reminded of the immortals' oldest rule: they cannot fight on holy ground. Kruger finds out that Connor is having an affair with Brenda and kidnaps her in order to draw Connor into the final fight. Connor accepts the challenge and kisses Rachel goodbye, telling her that Russell Nash dies tonight and that she knew this day would come. Rachel cries as she watches Connor leave for the last time. The two fighters meet on the roof of Silver Cup Studios and an epic sword fight begins. Kruger tries to use Brenda to defeat Connor by tying her to the studio's massive rooftop sign, but Connor manages to save her. The fight causes major destruction. Both fighters fall into a large warehouse which is surrounded by windows. After a climactic fight, Connor defeats Kruger and experiences the sum of all quickenings, which destroys every window in the warehouse and causing Connor to levitate in the air as the energy of all the dead immortals surges all around him. The police assume that Kruger is the headhunter serial killer they were looking for and that Nash was his final victim. The last scene shows Connor and Brenda in the Highlands, and it explains that the prize gives Connor awareness of the thoughts of all people all around the world and allows him to exert some influence. As a result, he can help people cooperate with one another. He is now also mortal, able to have children and grow old. The voice of Ramirez tells Connor that he now has power beyond anyone's imagination and urges him to use it well.